Alright guys, so today what you're going to do is we're going to work on 3 different integers targets. You guys are going to take some notes, you're going to do some examples, and then there's a quizzes game posted for you to practice those targets. And then tonight you'll have a homework activity to do at home. So first things first, let's look. You have to watch the mini lesson and take your notes. In our first section, we're going to be talking about real-world integers, which we talked about last week after the statistics test. Then we're going to be looking at identifying integers and their opposites. Super easy. And then our last one is that you can explain the meaning of 0 in a real-world situation. So, like I said, our first station is about real-world integers, and the target says I can use positive and negative numbers to represent quantities in a real-world context. Now, we did this last week. We did them after the test. We went over some words that can tell us whether an integer is going to be positive or whether an integer will be negative. Today, for the first little bit here, we're going to be just doing the exact same thing. So, first things first, what are integers? This is where your notes start. So it says define integers. Integers are all whole numbers and their opposites. Okay, so this includes positives, negatives, and 0. So you need to fill that in on your notes paper. Integers are all whole numbers and their opposites. Okay, next line, so this includes all positives, all negatives, and 0. So some examples are like -10, -9, 0, -2. Okay. Any whole number that you can come up with, positive or negative, and 0. Okay, so we use integers in our real lives every single day. We just don't call them that. So for example, when we're dealing with money, we know that positive numbers represent income and negative numbers represent debt. Okay, any of our football players out there can tell us that with football, the negative numbers represent numbers that are away from your goal, and positive numbers represent numbers that are towards your goal. Temperatures, okay, if it's really, really cold outside and our temperature is below 0, we know that those are negative temperatures. And if it's really, really hot outside, we have positive temperatures that indicate how far above 0 it is. Elevation, if we're talking about above sea level, those are positive numbers. Below sea level, those are negative numbers. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make a list of words that tell you if an integer will be positive or negative. We talked about some of these last week. There is some hung up on the wall in the front of the room where it says positive and negatives. But some of the key ones that I want you to have in your word bank that tells whether an integer is positive or negative are deposit. That's a big one. We're going to hear a lot with like money. If you deposit money into your account, that's a positive. You're putting it in there. Okay. Gets, if you're getting something, that's a positive. If you sell it, typically when you sell things, you're making money, so we consider that a positive. Income is money that you make, so that's a positive. Grew, okay, if you grow 5 inches, that's a plus 5 inches. Profit is the extra money you make on top of selling something, so that's a positive number. Increased. Ascend. To ascend means to go up, and usually we're talking about like in elevation. So if you're going up, those are positive. And paid. When we talk about being paid, we're getting money in our pockets, and so that's a positive number. So if you need to pause the video to get that word bank down into your positive columns chart, we're going to be using that for the rest of the integers unit, so make sure that you get all of those on there. Now we're going to move on to our negative words. Words that mean an integer is going to be negative are words like descends. Descends means it's going down. Okay, so if we're descending in elevation like a submarine, that's going to be a negative. Under, okay, under sea level or below sea level, okay, both of those words are going to tell us that it's a negative. The word lost, if you lose weight, okay, those are negative pounds. Withdrawal is like the opposite of deposit. So deposit means to put money in your account. Withdrawal means to take it out. And it's a negative because we're taking it out of our accounts. Okay. Debt. Debt means you owe somebody money. Costs. If something costs money, we're going to have to pay that. Deducts means you're losing, so it's a negative. Below, like if we're going below sea level. And the word owe. Owe also means that you have some debt, so it's going to be a negative O. Okay. All right, so you guys have some examples there, and I'm going to read the first one. If you'll drop down to where it says examples of real world integers. It says an example. So what I want you to do as I'm reading it is I want you to underline the word that makes it a positive or a negative, and then in the box that says integer, you're going to write the integer. So for example, in the first one, it says Sarah made a deposit of $25 into her bank account. Okay. Underline the word that tells you if it's going to be a positive or a negative. In this case, we would underline the word deposits. And deposits is a positive word, so that's going to make it be a positive 25. Now, we don't have to write the positive sign because we know if there's not a negative sign with it, it's just a positive number. Okay. So scooch on over to the other one. It says the submarine descended to a depth of 180 feet. I want you to underline the word that tells you if it's going to be a positive or a negative. In this example, we're going to underline descend because that means we're going down, and that is a negative 180 feet. Okay. So what I want you to do is I want you to put your video on pause, and I want you to finish examples 1 through 10. I want you to read them, and I want you to underline the words that tell you whether it's going to be positive or negative, and then I want you to fill those in on your notes paper. When you're ready, flip over to the back, and we're going to do integer opposites. Just press play, and it'll be ready for you to start integer opposites. All right, so station 2, okay, the next target we're going to look at are integer opposites, and they're so easy. You guys are going to be so excited. So our target for this is just that I can identify an integer and its opposites. So each integer has what's called an opposite, so fill that in on your notes paper. An integer and its opposite have the same distance away from 0 on the number line. Okay, so each integer and its opposite have the same distance away from 0 on the number line. So I'm going to put up a number line, just like what you guys have on your paper, and it says try the example 2 and negative 2. Okay, we know that the opposite of positive 2 is negative 2. So when we put it on a number line, I want you to start with a 0 in the middle of your paper. Okay, and then you're going to add a 1 and a 2, and then a negative 1 and a negative 2. And we're going to talk about graphing these tomorrow. But we can see that they have exactly the same amount of distance away from 0. Okay, negative 2 is 2 spaces away from 0 on the number line, and positive 2 is 2 spaces away from 0 on the number line. Okay, since 2 and negative 2 are both 2 spaces away from 0 on the number line, we consider those opposites. So, for example, if we were just to run through them, the opposite of 5 would be negative 5. The opposite of negative 9 would be positive 9. Okay, so today we're going to do some examples on our own. I'm going to help you with the first 2. There are some integer opposites, and there's also some real world integer opposites. So the first one is, what is the opposite of negative 2? I'll let you guys fill that in real quick. All right, check yourself. The opposite is positive 2. Okay. The second one across the way there is a real world integer opposite, and it says Maddie withdrew $11 from her account. We want the opposite of that in terms of a real world situation, and the opposite of that is that she deposited $11 into her account. All right, so what you guys are going to do is you're going to do questions 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the integer opposites column, and questions 1 through 4 in the real world integer opposites column. Please pause the video, okay, do those examples on your paper, and when you're ready to begin again, hit play, and we're going to start with the meaning of 0. All right, so the last station that we're going to take a look at is the meaning of 0. So it's I can explain the meaning of 0 or where 0 fits into a situation. So, so now that we've learned all about these integer opposites, we're going to take a look at where does 0 fit in, okay? So if we take a look, it says 0 can mean a lot of different things. It can be described as nothing, nada, not, zip, zilch, empty, goose egg. There's just a lot of ways that we can describe 0. Now, 0 is neither positive nor negative, so therefore its meaning changes with different real-world situations that we can look into. So for example, what does 0 represent on the thermometer? Okay, if we had to place a name on it, we would say that 0 represents 0 degrees. Okay, it's not a positive, it's not a negative, it represents 0 degrees. So on your paper there, that's your first situation, and it says, what would it represent? It represents 0 degrees. Okay, now the next one we're going to look at is talking about money. It says, Jason withdrew $12 from his bank account. How could you represent this with an integer? Well, we know withdrawal would represent negative 12. So it says, what does 0 mean in this situation? In this situation, 0 would mean that Jason has $0. He has no money in his account. Okay. All right, the next one says, we're talking about Wesley takes $6 out of his account, and then he puts $6 right back in. So in this case, he takes out 6 and he puts in 6. So it's a negative 6 and then a positive 6 real quick. So what does 0 represent in this situation? In this situation, 0 says 0 is no net change. Net change just means no total change in his account. Okay? No total change. And guys, go ahead and be putting these on your notes paper because you will need them on your homework later on. So since he's putting in 6 and then taking out 6 real fast, the 0 represents no change in his account. Okay, so this one's talking about distance. James is standing on a platform that is 7 feet above the water. He dives to a depth that is 10 feet below the water. So what would 0 represent in this situation? So if we look at James here, he's diving and that's 7 feet above the water. Here's the surface of the water, and then he's diving 10 feet below, okay? Where 0 hits is the surface of the water. If we were to put this on a vertical number line, we would have a 0 right here. Anything above the water would be positive. Anything below the water would be a negative. So 0 is just the surface of the water. Okay? Jackson is climbing a tree, and it is 8 feet above the ground. What does 0 represent in this situation? So if we were to put a vertical number line right next to this tree, anything above the ground is going to be positive. Anything below the ground would be negative. Therefore, 0 in this situation would be at the level of the ground. All right, and then our last one is Randy's football team lost 4 yards on the play. What would 0 represent in this situation? So we're standing, if you know anything about football, they start at what's called the line of scrimmage, okay? That is the starting point for their play. So his team lost 4 yards. So that means from the line of scrimmage, they're going back 4 yards. Any yards that they gain from that point are positive yards. So 0 represents no gain on this play. All right, guys, so what you're going to do now is make sure that your entire notes paper is filled in. Okay, you're going to go back to Google Classroom and click on the quizzes link. There are 40 points available there, and all they are is you're looking at identifying integers from real-world situations, identifying integer opposites, and explaining some situations what 0 is. So you need to do your very best. Those points are for a grade. Then what you're going to do when you get finished with that is you're going to work on your homework assignment that is also posted on Google Classroom. Okay, you'll need to write all of your answers on a separate sheet of paper to be turned in on Wednesday. Okay, all right, have a great day.